She's just too interested in like looking good for the camera.
Is re-giving him the information of what he should be doing.
But there is like a 1/1000 between no and the tap.
Yeah, so it's like no, tap, come, right? And kind of that general cadence. And let's say I tell him no, and before I tap and before I say come, he fixes himself, we're still gonna follow through with all of those steps, right?
Okay.
And the reason for that is because I always say the goal is not that we say no and he changes his behavior. The goal is that we don't have to say no in the first place because he stops making the mistake, right? So we don't want no to become like a command, right? Or like a warning, right? We want it to just completely stop the behavior.
Okay. Yeah, just because I didn't want to like put a command to it too. Like
sure.
When I'm walking and he gets out in front of me, like I've been going like
Sure.
And like I've noticed like sometimes I'll do the without giving him the click.
Yeah.
It will stop.
Yeah.
But
it's the same concept.
Like, it's a warning. It's not really.
You'll get stuck on like needing to say every 4 seconds.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, we're gonna start adding in the same deal, the no, the tap, and the come there as well. And in a minute, we'll take him outside. We'll do a little walking with him so we can see that.
And I was just gonna ask too, because like when you're walking, like, and he's a little bit in front of you, but you say come, does that make sense? Because he's not like away from me.
It does, yeah. So if you look at the come command, and this will make more sense as we actually go to teach it, the come command, no, come. The come command is not necessarily the act of him like being far from me and then moving to me. The come command is the positioning of being next to me. You know what I mean?
So you use that instead of heel?
Yeah. So it's our universal come to me and stay with me. So I could use it whether the dog's 100 yards away or 2 feet away. You know what I mean? And it still means the exact same thing.
So you don't use heel at all?
No, come is our universal both. There's just no need to have 2 separate commands for it, right? 74 right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm just kind of going off how he's responding to it. Like half the time when I'm doing this, I don't really even look at the number because I want to just gauge his response.
Because
right?
I heard him yelp.
Yeah, he let out a little yip right there, obviously. And that's just because we're in a lot higher of distractions, obviously. So we got to refocus him back in. And then as he refocuses in, you'll see that level start to then decrease. So what I try to do is after that initial conditioning stage like we did last time, where we know now he understands what this sensation is, what I try to do is every single time I use it, I kind of ask myself, did it seem like he cared too much about it or not enough about it?
Right.
And then I make little adjustments up or down almost every single time.
Okay. Yeah, because what I will say is like, I know he notices it, like on a 10.
Yeah.
Because I can see his head turn a little bit too.
Yeah. But is he motivated by it is the question,
Because then like, I still have to end up like hitting him with it.
Yep, no.
You know. Every 10, 15 seconds.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
And then, you know, that's defeating the purpose of it, right? A correction the dog should learn how to avoid.
Yeah.
So as I'm giving these corrections, I want to start to see that after just a couple of them, once he understands what it is we're working on, that he just maintains position on his own.
Yep.
Which he's doing great right now because we've given less corrections but more motivating corrections. And this is kind of where you start to see everything really come together.
So I'm assuming since that first one that you gave him where he yelped, I haven't really.
I think I needed to use it one more time just a minute ago. Okay. But he's been pretty good. And we're down a little bit more now. We're at about a 65 now.
Okay.
And I would assume that number will continue to decrease as we go.
Okay.
But he's doing great. Like I said, this is the goal, is we want to be able to go for our walk and have him just match our pace and us not need to nag him and stuff, you know?
So, like, how do you feel about, like, so he's still, like slightly in front of you?
Yeah.
But, like, so if you're trying to make a right-hand turn, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you, like, is that, like, do you care about that, or are you kind of just, like...
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. So long term I do, right? So like long term, I would want to tighten that up. And if I need to make a turn, you know, I want him to kind of heat out of my way a little bit.
Yeah.
But right now, if you look at like this bubble we're creating and we look at our leash walking, it's much more about a tension than a rigid position, right? And he's maintaining good attention. You know what I mean? Like if I slow down, like he's, for the most part, slowing down with me. If I stop, he's stopping with me, stuff like that. So I want him to just get comfortable doing that for a little bit before I start tightening this bubble up too much more. I think a lot of people kind of go the opposite way, where they start off and they're way too rigid with the dog. And it's like an unrealistic expectation for them to maintain, you know what I mean? And then they never figure it out, and you're constantly just like correcting the dog and thinking they're blowing you off, but they can't figure it out, you know?
Which was definitely, you know, a mistake on my part when he was a puppy and I started taking him on walks. I like looked for perfection right away, essentially, and then I ended up just correcting him the whole time.
Yeah.
You know? So hindsight, I would.
Come.
I would give more leniency.
Yeah. And again, like, you know, like now he's slowing down really good with me, but that last time when I was kind of demoing it, he was a little slower with it. So those things I want to see tighten up more, and that will help with, like, if I slow down, he slow down that much, I could make a right hand turn pretty easily. You know what I mean? Right. But initially, again, if we could keep our bubble a little looser, but be much more strict and firm about those, you know, the enforcement of those parameters, we're going to find that he gets it easier, and then we could tighten it up so much faster after that. You know, I think a lot of people, just in general, like they chase perfection so much with some of this stuff. You know what I mean? And it's like, God, like they stopped and it's like the dog sat, but this dog sat like crooked, and it's like they're like correcting them and moving them and stuff like that. And I'm always telling, not just owners, but like I work with a lot of new trainers, you know, and I'm constantly telling them, like, we're not training competition dogs. You know what I mean? Like, we're training pet dogs. We need for them to do a select couple of things really well, but not like crazy perfect. You know?
No, and I'm a bit of like a OCD, like perfectionist person myself in general. So that's even when I was with Matt still, I was like telling him about him. He's always a step ahead of me. I was like, it kills me, but like, am I being too hard on him? And he's like, right now you are. Like, it's okay. We'll tighten it up eventually.
Now here's the thing, right? Like if you're feeling like a lot of times when like you're the stage you were at before, where you're like he's constantly a step ahead. The dog is probably not doing something correctly. Like, 'cause he's a step ahead and you're constantly needing to get him back. Where right now, like, sure, maybe he's a step ahead, but it's not bothering you. You know what I mean? It's not like he's tripping me or anything like that, you know?
And it has continued to get
So you're not wrong to think that, right? Like, I want to be a perfectionist about the standards I hold the dog to. I'm just telling people sometimes to lower the standards a little bit. You know what I mean? But this is great. He's doing really good. And we understand that if we catch this stuff earlier and more firm, right, then we avoid all the headache later on. Where understandably, you know, as dog owners, we're not doing it constantly with dogs. We're trying to avoid giving the dog bigger corrections. You know what I mean? But when we do that, we wind up just making ourselves need to do it more. Exactly. Exactly.
Now, will you so it sounds like what you're saying too is like, because I think the first week or like on an 8 to 10, get them used to like what this feels like. But like going forward now, is everything going to be at a correction level?
No. So each time we add the e-collar into a new command, we go back to introducing it to that command and then increasing to a correction level. And listen, you may find sometimes you take them out and you're still at a 10. You know what I mean? Maybe 10 is enough, right?
Again, if I only have to correct it once,
exactly.
10, good enough.
Like even my dogs, like they vary like with their level all the time. I mean, there's times where they're in a more sensitive state of mind or something, and you don't need that much. And there's times where the thing needs to just be totally cranked, you know?
Depending on distraction level.
All sorts of things, or just they woke up in a weird mood that day, you know? There literally are some cases where dogs just like wake up a little more defiant.
And like in terms of like the incremental levels that you do, like, are you generally going up 5 at a time, 10 at a time?
Good question. Generally, it's like 5 to 10, you know? But like I said, I don't even really look at it. So in my mind, this sounds so stupid, I think big turn, little turn, right? So like, if the dog it was just a little too low, I'll make a little turn. If it's like they didn't really respond at all, I'll just do a big turn, right?
Now that does actually help.
And I find that like the little turn generally is about 5, the big turn is like 10 to 15.
Hi, how are you? Oh, yes, thank you so much. Thank you. What is this? What is this? You know, if you laid like this the whole time, that would make this so easy. You just kind of, you know, like when this stuff happens, I just need to show her that being mouthy and stuff like that isn't going to get this to stop, right? So that she learns that all of her little antics are really not going to be that effective. And if I felt that she was potentially actually going to be the type of dog that would actually like bite with intent to harm or anything like this, then I would just preemptively put a muzzle on her. So that way, even if she tried to bite me, I wouldn't have to stop. Good job. See, that wasn't so bad. She said, maybe I did overreact.
Come.
That was pretty good. All right, how do we feel about it?
Very good.
I think she's doing awesome. Is there any like last question? Well, I mean, obviously you can still ask me questions after this, but.
So when she's chasing after squirrels,
Yes.
so I'm just correcting her.
Yeah,
like,
just
when she
no and
starts,
correction.
There is a no with it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can say no. Honestly, I mean, if time's an issue, just hit the button more than anything. You know, we just want to stop her.
Okay.
But yes, you can. That is something that you can mark with your no and then correct for.
Okay.
But we just want to inhibit that initial like lizard brain response where she's just like, I'm not even thinking, I'm just going.
Okay. 'Cause I've been encouraging her to chase after squirrels. So that's what.
Well, and like I said, there can be a happy medium where once you've really established a ton of control, where the dog is not just going to act on those impulses just without even like checking in with you first. Because like I said, my dog loves to chase stuff. You're never gonna get the prey drive completely eradicated out of her, but we do need it to happen when it's safe and appropriate, you know? So that's where, in the beginning stages of that, is that we need to kind of put boundaries on it overall in any situation. And then once we're confident that she's not acting on those impulses as freely, then you can start to open the parameters in situations where it's okay, right? So like I said, if I'm out on a hike with my dogs, no one's around, he sees a bunny or a rabbit and he looks at me like, could I, you know? And then I say like, okay, go get it, you know? And then I call him back and everything's fine. So, but initially we can't like, kind of dabble in both, where it's like sometimes you're allowed to do it whenever you want, but then sometimes you're not allowed to do it because she's not going to know the difference. So, does that make sense?
Yep, sure does.
Cool.
It's fun until you're like cleaning up dead animals all the time too.
Yeah.
I've had to take my fair share of like dead animals in my yard away from my dogs.
Yes.
That's not fun.
Yes.
And it's one of those things where like you look at it too, like that's what she wants to kill that thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, like that's why she's going for it. Like, that's like her biological instinct.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Once that really resonated with me, that's when I was just like, you know what?
Yeah.
I'll just stop this for
Putting a
now.
stop.
Yeah. Yeah. My hound, he's like 14, and like I inherited him along with my husband when I met him, and obviously he has a crazy prey drive. But it's wild because in my yard, like he doesn't even have to chase the things anymore because he's so old, he just like outsmarts them at this point. Because he'll just figure out and smell where they are underground, and then he'll just follow them until they finally come out of the hole, and then he just grabs them.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll find if I'm out there with him, like doing yard work and he's out there for a while, I'll be picking up like 5 dead voles like the whole time I'm out there because
That's crazy.
he loves it. But yeah, so that's what I would do with that. Any other questions?
No, I think we're good.
I think she looks great. You've done an awesome job. I mean,
You've done an awesome job. I haven't really done anything, honestly.
well, you had to do all the work. I just gave you the information, so
You did, but no,
it's
I appreciate it. It's been good.
no, she's come a long way. So her confidence especially.
Yeah, we got a little guy right there. So it's not so much the looking that's the problem, right? It's if he gets out of position, obviously, right? So if he looks over, I don't mind. No, come. But right there, that's where he got out of position. So I want to interrupt it right there. And we're going to interrupt that at a little bit higher of a level than we typically would. So right there, that was at about a 50. And a lot of times, if you can catch it at that like exact moment, like right before they go into like total freak out mode, you could get them to slow down much easier. As opposed to, I think a lot of times we wait until the dog's like already exploding and then it's just like too late. Now right there, obviously, he stopped to pee, but no, that's okay. That actually was a good correction still, because it definitely was not an I need to go to the bathroom pee. He was stopping to mark, right? And a lot of times what we'll see is these dogs kind of get put in these situations that are more challenging. They'll do different things to kind of test the boundaries, right? So stopping to try to mark on something, unless, again, if he legitimately needed to go to the bathroom, that'd be a different story. But right there, just marking is his way of like testing, like, am I gonna get away with this right now, so that he could test it further, you know? So that was good. What's going on with Fisher?
So, he's nervous right now, but ever since like straight lockdown on COVID, he's been super protective of me and my husband. Like, especially in the house, but even like outside of the house. If we're not there, like, he's fine with other people, but if we're around, he is like, he'll like lock eyes on somebody and like lunge at them in their stomach, or like like nip their clothing. And so we just moved here from Detroit, and we did like a board and train program there, and so I have an e-collar.
Yep.
He knows some commands, but like when he gets like his eyes locked on something, I don't know how to redirect it or what to do.
Sure. Okay, I gotcha. All right, well, I think what we're looking to kind of see today is just where his current training is at. Obviously, that'll give us a reference point of like, if there's things we still need to teach, obviously, if it's just a matter of taking those commands he knows and proofing them better, you know, showing you how to socialize them better, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I would say that's a normal thing that we'll see people do from time to time, whether with like a long line or like a flexi lead or something like that. They'll use it because like on a short leash, the dog is just completely unmanageable, you know? And it's like a catch-22, because it's like, yeah, they pull a little less because they got more distance, obviously, but then you're kind of just feeding into the like lizard brain that's just like all over the place. You know what I mean?
I started like, so we're not like religious with our e-collar.
Sure. Yeah.
I've started to phase it, like try to get him a little more used to it when I knew that we wanted to bring him back for training. But like I've been when he knows I have like the treats on a walk, he walks good.
Sure.
So it's like he knows what he's doing, but
you know, behavior in general, right, is contingent on consistent reinforcement.
Is he okay to do this, or do you want me to pull him back?
I don't really care what he does right now. Yeah. Obviously, there's no expectation of him at this point. But yeah, behavior is contingent on consistent reinforcement, right? So whether that's the dog wants something, right, and we're reinforcing it positively, or they're trying to avoid something and we're giving corrections for things. In the end of the day, if there's no reinforcement for anything, he's not going to listen, right? So our goal with anything is to be able to leverage both sides of that equation and make sure that obviously there's rewards for things, but there's also clear consequences for things, and all of it is predictable. You know what I mean? The second you fade everything out altogether, and it's like we're no longer rewarding for things and we're no longer correcting for things, you could have had the best trained dog in the world and it all goes out the window. Not because they forgot it, it's just because they're like, what, like, why would I do it? You know what I mean? Like, why would I do all of these extra things when I don't have to do it and there's nothing in it for me to do it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when you took him to training the first time, what kinds of things did you take him there for?
So he was like, he just didn't know, like, in my mind, like he didn't know how to be like a pet. Like we got him, he was from Detroit Animal Control. He was like wild in our house, hunting our cats, like just like he wasn't like totally potty trained.
Sure.
And so we like he learned sit, stay. He used to know how to do place, and then they taught him heel. But I only had one follow-up session with them where I was present, and I think that was a huge miss because like.
And you only had one of those because that's all it included, or you just didn't go to any other ones?
That's all it included.
Okay. Yeah.
And they were like an hour from us, so like I could have taken him up on like 5 more sessions, but
yeah. That's the problem with like how some places will do board and trains, is it creates this expectation that like, you know, training the dog is really what we're doing, which is not the case. Like if we do a board and train program, it's interesting, like after that dog goes home, until we've started the follow-up classes, I don't even have an expectation of the dog like listening to the owner, you know, because all of the training really is for you. The benefit of the board and train is you get some of the tedious repetitions out of the way. You know what I mean? Like at least at that point we know he knows everything, but then we need to teach you how to use that training, right? So that's probably where things went wrong, is you just didn't have enough guidance as far as how to take that training and implement it.
And I don't feel confident like making corrections right now. Like, that I'm doing it right.
Yeah, sure.
And then like how many times do I say command, or like how do I do it? And then
just the basic fundamentals of like how do we use the training. Okay.
And then the other thing is like I just don't know how to train it out of him when he's like so impulsive. Like the example I think I told you on the phone was like we were just like sitting on the couch and he was next to my brother's girlfriend, petting him for like half an hour. All of a sudden he gets like this look in his eyes. Yeah,
that's not so much like an impulsiveness thing. Like when I look at impulsiveness, I look at like we're on the walk and he sees another person and he just wants to go for it, right? Or he sees a squirrel and he wants to just chase it or whatever. You know, like impulse control to me is just like lack of thinking before acting. You know what I mean?
Okay.
That to me, the situation you described is a socialization related issue, right? So that's how are we introducing him to new people in a way where we're not putting anybody in a vulnerable position, right? We're making sure we're not putting the dog in a vulnerable position, and we're making sure everybody feels safe and secure, right? And there are certain things that there's just like rules to socialization. It's like the laws of socialization, you know what I mean? And even with my dogs, I don't remember how much we talked about this over the phone, but like I have 4 different dogs that all have 4 completely different temperaments, you know what I mean? Some of them, you could literally put them in any social situation ever and they're gonna be fine. And 2 of them are just kind of like quirky sometimes. They're fine, right? But it's like, I have to do things a certain way to keep them successful, because if I try to just throw them into any situation, they're gonna fail. You know what I mean? And he's probably just one of those dogs that he just needs to be socialized in a particular way so that he feels safe, right? So that's what we want to kind of get to the bottom of with this. Down. Perfect, right? So I gave the command one time, he didn't do it because he was distracted and because he's like, who the hell is this guy, right? So what I did is I gave a very clear correction sequence for that. I identified the mistake with no, I gave a correction just at a 1, super low, right? and I repeated that down command. Now, I'm not saying that have this thing at 1 all the time, obviously, but in that situation, it seemed like it was enough to get him to adjust his behavior, right? So now I'll just release him. Do you use break for this?
Yeah.
Break. We're gonna walk around and I'm gonna do that again, right? So I think one big mistake a lot of people do when they're giving commands and stuff is they just talk way too much, right? You're saying down, 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 stay, stay, wait, this, that, break, okay, here, right? It's just there's so much information getting thrown at the dog, they have no clue what to do with it, right? So we simplify it. Again, all I care about right now is down. Start adding a little duration into that. No. Place. Now I heard you were using stay a lot with him. Now the way we train, we don't use a stay command. Stay, in our opinion, is like one of the most redundant words in the dog training language, because there's never a time you're gonna tell them like place or down or sit, but get up whenever you want to, right? So it doesn't really make sense. Plus, we have a clear beginning and end to the position already, right? He doesn't get up until we tell him break, right? So why do we need an in-between? A lot of times what we'll see is that people will use stay like a crutch. So I heard you a couple times as you were walking away, you were reminding him, you're like, stay, 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 right? So we use it to like interrupt them when we think they're gonna make the mistake, as opposed to letting them make the mistake so that they could learn from it, right? So I'm not gonna give a stay command. Obviously, once I put him into position, I'm just gonna have him maintain that position until I release him. And not that I'm against him off sniffing and stuff like that, but I wanna make sure he's gonna be able to focus in here, obviously. Typically when it comes to like freedom on the walk, it's not that they can't have it, but a lot of times we can't reel them in. No, come when we need to, you know? So I always start off my walks with like some nice strict heeling. Get them nice and focused in, get them kind of working their noodle a little bit. Then somewhere in the middle, I'll give them like a break, let them sniff around and stuff. And then we'll end with heeling again and make sure they can reel it back in. No, come.
Yeah, I'm like, I get nervous. Passing someone on the sidewalk.
Sure.
Sometimes he's like totally fine. Other times he'll like lunges at them.
Yeah. A lot of what you're describing to me as far as loud motorcycles. No, come. As far as some of the like aggressive outbursts, a lot of times our dog is too often in a position where they're making too many decisions on their own without our guidance, right? So let's take the walk, for example. You mentioned sometimes he lunges at other people, sometimes he does fine, right? Well, in general, 100% of the time right now on the walk, he's basically doing whatever he wants to do, right? He's dictating the pace of the walk, where he goes, what he smells, what he looks at, right? So because of that, even though he's fine with some people, he's not fine with others because he's choosing, right? Every time he passes a person, he's the one making the decision of, is this person okay or is this person not okay, right? Where the second we start taking back control of some of these situations and we start enforcing something like our heel position, right? Or giving direction, no, come. In the form of a bed stay or place command when guests come over the house or something like that, at least initially, right? What we're doing is we're taking back those decisions, right? When somebody comes over the house, we're telling him, you need to do this right now, don't worry about the person that's coming in, right? As opposed to him going up to that person and being like, are you okay or are you not okay, right? Or him being on the couch and hanging out with your friend and he decided for the first hour that she was okay, then for whatever reason, at that hour and a half mark, he decided she was no longer okay. You know what I mean? Because we never made that decision for him, right? So that's where our commands come into play with some of this kind of stuff, is to help give direction to the dog when they're in those fearful, anxious states of mind so that they could start to see us as the person making the decisions and look to us when they get nervous to make those decisions, right? Kind of. I mean, our first step, right? So like, it's like a multi-step process, because our first step before we even worry about like the actual socialization from the standpoint of like interacting, we have no business socializing our dog around a trigger we don't have control of them over. Or around, I should say, right? So until I could say, right, like I'm gonna go for a walk or I'm gonna have guests come over and I'm gonna keep my dog completely under control around them, until I see them like starting to realize, okay, these people aren't messing with me. Mom's giving me direction, right? And I'm focused on her, right? We don't even have to worry about the interaction side of things. And a lot of people look at that like we're avoiding the problem, which is not the case, because too often we look at socialization like it's the interaction, right? When socialization is the being around those things as well. And, you know, typically speaking, they're still concerned while they're around those people before the interaction even takes place, which is why he goes on the defense so quickly, right? He's on edge around them at all times, so anytime they go to touch him or start showing interest in him or lock eye contact or anything like that, he immediately just goes to, like, I'm just gonna lunge to keep you away, right? This looks good though. And like I said, there's a lot that goes into this, you know, there's a lot of stuff we gotta go over as far as getting you the information and stuff, but this is kind of generally how it works.
Okay.
Or do you just not really socialize with dogs very much?
He goes to daycare. He like plays great with dogs.
You go to daycare here?
No, or he goes to Camp Bow Wow.
Oh, and he does good there?
Yeah.
Oh, then I would say he's fine with the other
Okay.
dogs. That's not a
But,
problem.
like,
Yeah.
It's when they like come to our house,
Yeah.
or like he'll be like, he was like playing with like my brother's little French bulldog and
Yeah.
like a tiny corgi, totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
Someone comes over with a dog on a leash
Yep.
from the neighbor's yard, and he like I don't know, snaps at the dog.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of this is going to come down to knowing where to socialize him and where not to socialize him, because everything comes down to us setting up the environment properly for socialization, right? We have a pretty strategic way that we go about socializing dogs with both dogs as well as people, right? Dogs, typically speaking, same with people, right? I try to establish some sort of control around the trigger first. Like I said, if we don't have any ability to keep him under control in the presence of this thing, I have no business socializing him with that thing, right? So anytime somebody comes over the house, I always do a bed stay with my dogs for the first like 20 minutes or so that they're there. Like I said, that communicates to them, don't worry about the people, focus on this right now, lets the arousal come down a little bit, gives us something to hold him accountable to, obviously, and lets him experience seeing, smelling, hearing that person or dog, obviously, right? From there, if it's a dog, after I've established the control, from there I make sure there's just no resources out that would cause competition, so no food, toys, affection, obviously. And I make sure it's only ever done off leash, right? I will never socialize a dog on the leash. It's the worst way you could do it, right? They're trapped basically in their mind when they're on that leash. So you'll see 10x more reactivity. That's why when you're out on your walk and your dog sees other dogs, even if he socializes just fine at Camp Bow Wow and stuff, in his mind, I'm held back from this thing. I want to get to it. I'm frustrated. I'm just going to throw all my energy into it, right? And then you try to introduce a dog that's in that state of mind, everything goes out the window.
Like,
Big time,
I
right?
feel like I made it like worse around, like one of my buddies was like standing next to me.
Yeah.
And Fisher was there fine, but I was nervous, and so I pulled back, and that's what
the second they feel that restraint pulling back, it just creates this forward drive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, you know, obviously with people, same concept. We want to make sure the resources aren't out there, you know, obviously. So no food, no toys, no affection, obviously. Additionally, if I have a dog that's a little territorial over the house and a little apprehensive with guests coming over, I don't allow furniture access when I have guests over also.
Okay.
Right? I think you mentioned he was on the couch with somebody. Just a vulnerable place to put him in. You know what I mean? I want him free to get up and move around and not be on this like big cushy thing that he feels, again, trapped, where if he starts feeling uncomfortable, he doesn't have a way to just easily get away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, you know, with people, the only thing I do a little different than with dogs is I move more slowly through the process, right? So sometimes, in order to start building on success, you can go ahead and walk over to him here. What's up, man? Sometimes in order to build on success, and yeah, just keep him there. If he gets off, give your correction and just get him resituated back onto there, right? But this looks good. Good distraction for him.
Sometimes with people, if I have a history of being really apprehensive around new people, and we were coming off an incident or something like that, sometimes the next like 3 or 4 times I have somebody come over the house, I'll put it on a bed stay or a place for you, and I'll hold it the whole time like this, you know, and there will be no interaction, even if it's 2 hours, something like that, right? And that, in a lot of cases, is 10 times more productive than you having a botched introduction. You know what I mean? Because what we're doing is we're shifting him out of the state of mind of being on edge, right? To just chill there, and you don't let anybody mess with him while he's on there, and we're not going to let him get up and mess with anybody else, and you finally start to achieve that neutrality, right? And then once we can really hit that point where, let's say,
they're the guests that just came over, right? You saw he was like, they came in, he held his position, but he's like, what are they doing over there, right? I want to see him hit that point where he goes from that to now he's like, okay, I'm not paying attention to them anymore, but I'm still pretty stressed out, to him like really just relax into that position, right? And once I see him hit that point, that's kind of like my cue of, okay, now we could start the introduction process. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we have to let him socialize from this point first, you know what I mean? And let him get comfortable and loosen up a little bit before we allow that introduction to take place, right?
Yeah.
So that's in a nutshell kind of how this progression is gonna work. But like I said, he's starting good. It looks like he has a general idea of what to do for the most part, so I don't think he needs a full program by any means. Looking at him, my assumption would be like 5 to 6 sessions is probably what you need.
Okay. How do we do introductions?
Yeah.
And like it sounds like a lot of it's just gonna be like, if he's going crazy barking at someone outside, I just put him in.
There's so many other things to talk about. Like obviously you get into then just reactivity when there's like he's not even socializing. Like people aren't coming over or anything. He's just like losing his mind at stuff. And how do we effectively like discipline for those things and stuff? Like those are whole other things we got to get into, obviously. But at least right now, your number one goal should be we got to start getting back in the groove of doing this stuff. I would pick literally your place command and your walk. And for the next week, I would just work on those things a lot. Right? Forget everything else, just those 2 things. And that'll get you some headway with stuff, obviously. And then your other like number 1.1 goal, right, is no more bad encounters, right?
Yeah.
So your goal right now is anytime there's gonna be somebody coming over the house or something, he's either on place or he's just put away or something, just to make sure we're not setting ourselves back any further. And we're not letting people when we're out on the walk even try to like pet him or interact with him or anything like that.
Yeah. Okay.